Hello, I'm Zett. Since a lot of people still have problems with the bubbles, I decided to make a big video which shows you everything you need to know. I have to say the last step can't be done until a VHBL for 3.35 is released. But as long as you're on a firmware earlier than 3.30, which means 320, 318, or anything that starts with a 1 or 2, you can do this right now. Otherwise you have to wait for the VHBL release. Okay, let's get started. Like previously, I have a few tabs opened, which will show you what we need. At first we need the VHBL.ISO file, which we can get from my good friend QuickRazor, which I will simply download. And as you can see, now it appears on the left because that's my download folder. Next, we go to account.sonyentertainmentnetwork.com. Then we enter our information, log into our PlayStation account, and go to the games section. The thing now is we have to select a game we want to use as a base. The game has to be already on your PS Vita. For example, in my case, I would like to use the game Uno. It is a small game, as you can see, 29 MB. So, yeah. And it's a full game. It's not a minis. It's not a PS Vita game. It's a full PSP game. I've made myself some notes. In the bottom part of this text document, we can see, in theory, any PSP game, exclamation mark behind the PSP, any PSP game can be used, with a few exceptions. Depending on your firmware, you cannot use the 3.18 exploit games, and you can't use minis. Those have another exception. On firmware 3.1x, you can not use minis, with once again an exception, and the exception is if the minis or the mini game has network functions like arcade darts. Then you can use it, because a mini with network functions is technically a full game and not a minis. On the firmware which is older than 3.10, I think anything should be working. Oh yeah, and as always, it cannot be a PS Vita game, it cannot be a PlayStation Mobile game, and it cannot be a PlayStation 1 game. It has to be a PSP full game, or if you are on an old firmware, it can also be a minis. But otherwise it has to be a PSP game, one which is not a mini. At the top of this text document, I've listed all the firmwares for the PS Vita and a shortcut, like the firmwares 150, 151 and 152 are shortened to 15X, since this basically describes all the firmwares from 150 to 159, even though there's no 159. And I'm doing this for all the other firmwares. So if you think, what is he talking about, what is firmware 3.3x? Keep in mind, it's either 330 or 335. Okay, I think this is boring you, so we'll just continue with the downloads. As you can see, Uno, I'm downloading this file. This is whatever.xpd file, and I'm downloading it. It's a small file, as you can see, 682 bytes, but it contains a link we need. But more about this later. On my website, at the top is a search box, and if we search for CMA, you will find that I list the Sony CMA and the OpenCMA patches on my website. Some people are using QCMA because it works on Windows, Mac and Linux, but sometimes people have problems with QCMA due to the driver or due to a previous installation of Sony CMA. So I will just use Sony CMA and OpenCMA for this tutorial. This will of course also work with QCMA, but for this tutorial I'm using OpenCMA. At first you have to select the Sony CMA of the firmware which is installed on your PS Vita. So if you have a PS Vita which is running version 2.02, you use Sony CMA for 2.0x. If you have a PlayStation Vita which is running firmware 2.61, then you use the Sony CMA for version 2.6x. So, like on the previous text document documented, that selection of firmwares is shortened to whatever .x. So yeah, in my example I'm using a PS Vita on firmware 3.35, so I'm using Sony CMA for 3.3x. Then we have this download code, 38Z, it's new, Z8Z, start download, download file, save file, and done. Then we go to the OpenCMA section. OpenCMA is a patch that patches the normal Sony CMA, so you need both, which basically means you can use the normal CMA without requiring to update your firmware and without requiring to be online. So I could also do this if I would be offline, but I'm not. Otherwise I could not download files. OpenCMA revision 2 is for firmware 1.50s, OpenCMA revision 3 is for firmwares 1.60s, revision 4 for 1.80s, and revision 5 is for 2.00 until 3.35. So for basically any newer firmware. So I'm downloading OpenCMA revision 5063, and that, start download, download file, save file, and I'm done. Next thing we need is fake NP. As always, use the search box, search for NP, and then we can download fake NP. 9.8Z6Z. Start download, download file, save file, and it's downloaded. If you need a list of the exploit games for the 3.18 version, go on the main page of my website and then on this little click me. It will give you a list, which you can of course zoom in into this list, and you see for which firmware it is, and therefore which games you should basically not use for this trick. If a game is minis or not, you can see this if you own or search the game. But for what firmware we used it to exploit it, that's the list, you can use it. For example, I would say anything that was used to exploit 3.15 and later, like my stylus and everything below, I would not use any of those games, because on 3.30 and 3.35 they have massive restrictions, which means even if you have a successful bubble created with one of these games, if you then update to 3.35, the bubble will not work because the game has restrictions. If you use any of these older games, or any game which is not on the list, which would be the best case, then the game has no special restrictions and the bubble should also work on 3.35. Okay. Next thing we need is the package viewer. Just go on Google, type in package viewer, and use the qj.net website, which gives you a link to package viewer version 1.3. Scroll a bit and there's a download link. You click it, get the package viewer, and okay. What else you might need is WinRAR. Just download it from the official website, and Notepad++. But I'm not downloading these because they are pre-installed. Okay, first thing first, I think I'm done with this. First thing first, installing the Sony CMA. So I will open this file, extract this .exe file, and run it. Since I'm German and installing the content manager in German, It might take a while, so the video might be quite long. So yeah. At first, installing Sony CMA, and if this is done, we install the OpenCMA, since it's a patch. Now the program, it was installed successfully, whatever. Okay, changing folders. I'm changing the folders because I used to have my folders somewhere else. Music, video, and pictures is unimportant. We don't need those. We just need the documents folder. At mine, I had it on my Zett drive. Then I used documents, and I think that's it. Yeah, sure. It says if I swap the folder, the previous PS Vita and PlayStation Vita TV system might not find the necessary files, but since we are changing this on purpose, it's not a problem. Okay, I'm using this as path. I hope this is the correct path. Now it's creating a database. So whatever. I should have changed music and pictures because it now will take a long time to get all this stupid music and stuff which we actually don't need. But whatever. Since this is now setting up the files, we put everything we need into the signed VHBL bubble folder. We would need this XPD file, but it contains something I do not want you to see, so I added the file without this special thing. We also need a package viewer, fake NP, and the bubble trig. So move everything into a folder so we have everything where we need it. If you open package viewer, you got a changelog file and an .exe file. We just need the exe file. Then we also need fake NP, or we'll just extract the whole folder. So that's easier. And we need the VHBL bubble. We need this file, or this folder. We need the .ISO file, and it's recommended to read the README file, so you should do this. Let's see. CMA finished? No, of course not. It's no... whatever. Okay, we extracted the files, so we don't need those zip and RAR files anymore, so I can delete them. In the end, we have the VHBL.ISO file, the package viewer.exe, the XPD file from the Sony website, the folder for the VHBL files, and the fake NP folder, which also contains 3 files. Okay, Sony Content Manager, version information 3.30 dot whatever, so it's the version for 330. If you now check the settings, we can see the folder is Zett/documents/PS Vita, so it would be Zett documents PS Vita, and in there I've got all my stuff like psave data are save data files, pgame are games. No, pgame are games, PS games are PlayStation 1 games, PSM are PlayStation mobile games, packages are packages, and apps are, I think, PS Vita apps, and so on. So yeah, this is the only path we need. You can choose any path you want, I don't care. It's just an example. Then we close the Sony CMA because we have to patch it. Let's see. Okay, then we got the folder from previously. Back to my downloads folder because we still have to use OpenCMA to patch the Sony folder. As you can see, it has a changelog, an XPD file, DLL, and so on. At first, I have to go to, let's see what it is. C users / whatever. C programs Sony CMA. Okay, there we go. The path is at mine, since I'm running 64-bit Windows. C program files x86 Sony Content Manager Assistant. In there we drop all these files, and yes, we drop these files. Then we run the run.bat file as administrator, and this now patches the Sony CMA. As you can see, the original file has a little, what is it, a dash or whatever behind it, and the patched file is a bit bigger. Now we can start it, and we have a patched Sony CMA. It looks the same, but you can now use it without updating your firmware, and you can now use it without being online. If your PS Vita still wants you to update, enable airplane mode, disable Wi-Fi, and reboot the PS Vita. If it still wants to update, check this XML file and be sure that the numbers in here are smaller than the version of your PS Vita. Okay, we got OpenCMA, we got the necessary files, and we got, I think that's pretty much everything we need. Now we open this downloaded XPD file, like it's the file from the Uno game we downloaded from the Sony website. As you can see, I removed some part because I don't want people to know my PlayStation Network email address. But the important part we need is this URL. It's a link to the package file of Uno on the PlayStation servers. So I will start my Firefox, drop this link, and download the package file. And after the download is finished, it should be in my download folder. And there we go, PKG file or package. Next thing, we use the package view.exe and open the package file. Either click on File and Open, or move the package file into this window and it will open the package file. npeh00020, this is Uno. And then we go into the USR direction, content direction, and in there is an EBOOT.PBP file. We right click it, extract to source folder, and it will extract the file. This is one way of gathering this EBOOT.PBP file. Another way would be connect with your PSP to the PlayStation Network, download the game, and then move it from your PSP to your computer. But like I said, this is one way of doing this, and this works with just a computer. As we can see, same structure and EBOOT.PBP file. We copied this file and put it next to VHBL.ISO. Then we move the EBOOT.PBP in the VHBL.ISO file and put it into the fake NP folder. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 files in this. README is not necessary, but whatever. Then we keep Shift pressed and then right click. This option is new. It says open comment or comment prompt here. So if I click it, I have the CMD window in this path. This is an easy and clean way to open the CMD into the folder you want to. Next thing is, at first I will rename the EBOOT.PBP file into input or PSN. It's not important what you call it. I just rename it because the file we get at the end is also called EBOOT.PBP. And if I would not rename this file, it would be deleted and overwritten by the new file. Okay, now we write fake np -b because base psn.pbp, this is the Uno game, and VHBL.ISO. This is the VHBL in the form of an ISO, and what this command is doing is pretty easy. It's taking, well, the base or the header of the game, of the PlayStation Network game, and creates a new EBOOT.PBP file, or is set header, but the content is the VHBL.ISO. So it fakes the ISO as a real game and uses the header to fake it as the Uno game. You could press enter, but we can also like add another line, which I will call output.pbp. So the new file is called output. Okay, let's see. System version 620, blah 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 blah. 100% done. Okay. As you can see, the input file is psn.pbp, which is Uno. The output file is very small, has no icon, but as you can see has the same things as Uno, like name, disk ID, and so on. This is pretty much the computer part. Oh wait, the CMA part. We rename output.pbp into eboot.pbp and copy it. Next we copy it into our CMA direction, which at mine is Zett/document/PS Vita, which as you can see I'm in. Save data, whatever random number thingy, and then we put it in any save data you want. Like you can put it in a PlayStation 1 save data, you can put it in a PSP save data, it's not important. I will just use this PlayStation 1 save data because I most likely use it to transfer files, as you can see on this icon. Oh, it's also important is you need to copy the, let's see, the VHBL01234 folder into the same direction as this. I already did this, so yeah. The next part will be on the PS Vita. So okay, on our PS Vita we need at first to verify that we have the game installed. In my case it's Uno. Uno is installed. I just downloaded it from the PlayStation Store, so it will work. Then you can see I already have 2 bubbles on this PS Vita, but those are not important, not at the moment. And as you can see, where's the settings app? Settings app. And as you can see, I'm running 3.35. Then I will click on Content Manager, copy content, and well, we'll copy content. We need to copy 2 things. At first, I put the EBOOT.PBP file in a PlayStation 1 save data, so I have to go to the PlayStation 1 save data section and copy the save data. Okay. As you can see, it used to be Final Fantasy VII save data, but I changed the icon. Then I go to PSP save data and copy the VHBL folder, which is necessary, so the VHBL, or in our case the modded Uno bubble, will find the files it needs to launch the VHBL. Now we need a thing which I cannot provide you yet, but we most likely will be able to provide it to you very soon. If you are on 3.35, you need a working VHBL or PSP filer. For 3.35, this would be you download a specific game, we tell you, then you add the save data, a hacked save data we give you, and then you can run the VHBL. If you are on a firmware that is lower than 3.30, for example 3.18, then you can use VHBL, TNV or ARC to do the very same thing. But since there is currently no VHBL for 330 or 335, I will have to show you this with the VHBL bubble. So if you have access to a VHBL on 335, you can follow this tutorial. If you don't, you have to wait until we publish a VHBL for 335. Let's say you would have access to one. Then you start it. Then you start either PSPemulator. If that doesn't work, you start the FTP application. If you start PSPemulator, you do the same I did in the previous video, which was you go to the save data folder, check if everything is there, like the EBOOT file of Uno. Let's see, it has Uno, it's very small, it's our file we need. And the VHBL folder we need for starting the VHBL. Okay, in game we have npeh00020, which is Uno, and two other games which are not important. The trick we have to do is basically rename the folder and rename it into, well, the same folder name with an AND at the end. I'm not sure, I think PSPemulator on VHBL sometimes won't be able to edit content in the game folder, at least on 3.35. So I will show you a trick which requires the FTP application and a computer, because we have a trick which will enable you to rename things in the game folder even though there's technically a restriction. Like I said, if you have access to a VHBL on 335, you can do this right now. If not, wait until we publish one. If you are on an older firmware and have access to the TNV eCustom firmware, the ARC eCustom firmware, or VHBL, then you can do this right now. First thing first, enable Wi-Fi, since the FTP requires Wi-Fi. Then start the FTP application. I don't know why this is glitching, but whatever. At the top there should be an IP. Let's see, 192.168, blah blah blah. Put this IP into an FTP client on your computer. I will show you how to do this on a computer. So I will now switch back to the computer. Okay, back on the PC. At first we need the FTP client FileZilla or FileZilla, whatever. Google it, go into the website of the FileZilla project, whatever, and download the client. Since I have Windows, it recommends me to download Windows, but if you have something else, you can download, well, the client for something else. I already have FileZilla installed, so yeah. Start FileZilla, and then at the top left you have a button. If you click it, you can create a new server. I did this. Rename it whatever you want. I named it PS Vita. Then I added the server IP, which my PS Vita showed in the FTP application. I think it was one, well, what's in there. You can leave the port blank. For protocol you use FTP. For encryption you use not encrypted. For connection type you use anonymous. Then advanced, well, I think it can stay how it is, like default. Then transfer settings, you have to change the transfer mode to active and restrict the same maximum connections to 1. Otherwise it might create some problems on the memory card, for example corrupted files, which then you have to format the memory card to get rid of the files. So just restrict it to 1. If you did this, you can connect to the PS Vita. It's important that your computer and your PS Vita is inside of the same Wi-Fi network. It has to be the same wireless network. As you can see, I can now connect to my PS Vita. On my PS Vita, some new lines appear on the screen, but that's not important. We have to do everything on the computer. You go into the PSP folder, go into the save data folder, and then the whatever random save data you choose folder. For myself it's SCES whatever, and we can see the EBOOT.PBP is still in there. If we redo it via FTP, it's unimportant if it's in there or not. I just checked it. And yeah, the important thing now is we actually have to modify things inside of the game folder. For example, the UNO folder, which is MPEH00020, but we can't change things inside of the game folder because the PS Vita doesn't want us to change things inside of the game folder. An old trick was we rename the game folder into something else, like game 2. It's very important that you rename it back to game when you're done. If you don't do this, you have to, well, format the memory card. On 3.3.5 they fixed this, so if I now refresh, you can see it won't let me rename the game folder. Well, how can we solve this? How about we rename the PSP folder into PSP2? Refresh, and oh, there we go. We can rename it. So the path is now changed. The path protection is now, well, disabled, and now we can rename this folder. NPEH00020 is the UNO folder. We have to rename it into NPEH00020 and. So you have to add the and symbol at the end. If I now refresh, you can see it stays, so no protection. Then we have to create a new folder, and it has to be called the same as the UNO folder without the news icon. So NPEH00020 and okay. It now has created this folder. If I now want to move this EBOOT.PBP file in there, at first it looks like it moved the file in there, but if I refresh, you can see, nope, we're not allowed to modify EBOOT.PBP files regardless of folder. For this we used another trick. At first I rename EBOOT.PBP into EBOOT2.PBP. The PS Vita doesn't care what PBP it is, as long as it's not called EBOOT or PBOOT. If I now refresh, we can see it's on the PS Vita. But how to rename it into EBOOT.PBP? If I just rename it and refresh, it reverts back to the old state. So we have a little trick. Rename it to EBOOT.PBP ... This is important. Then you rename it again to EBOOT.PBP . If you now refresh, it should be called EBOOT.PBP. And now we have the file we need in the right folder. As you can see, NPEH20 and this is UNO, and this is our created signed file, as you can see on the game size. Now the very important thing is you must not forget to rename PSP2 back into PSP. If you forget this, you most likely have to format your memory card, because the PS Vita is searching for PSP content in the /PSP directory. If you rename it, it's not there anymore. So if you forget to rename it, enjoy to format the memory card to get rid of the junk data and re-add all your content, be it from the PlayStation Store or from your computer or whatever. So you must not forget to rename it back to the original name. Okay, the PSP folder is now once again PSP. Then we have game, and then we have the new NPEH20 folder, which is our signed file which we created on our computer, and then we have this new, the old folder which we renamed into NPEH20 and, which is the UNO game. Thanks to the trick in the PSPemulator found by Mr. Gas and Tom, we can now launch the file which is in here, while the PS Vita checks the file which is in here. Okay, now back to the PS Vita, and we will do the last thing, which then enables us to launch the VHBL on our PS Vita. Okay, after we did all the things on the FTP on our computer, exit the FTP application with pressing square. Then you can close the bubble you used to run VHBL, be it a VHBL bubble or be it an exploit game, like one we will announce for 3.35. So you can do it yourself on 3.35. without being dependent on coming from an earlier firmware. Be also sure to disable Wi-Fi because we don't need it anymore. Next thing is you have to shut down the PS Vita or power it off, how this button calls it, and then you press R, the PlayStation button, and the power button, and the PS Vita should turn on and it should boot into a recovery mode. For whatever reason, the last 3 times I tried to do this, the battery inside of the PS Vita was not full enough to do this, so it didn't turn on. And it seems to be, it is still the very same case, and I don't know why. And this pisses me off. God, power on. Of course, now it's working. Now it's working. Okay, let me try it again. I will power off the PS Vita and then I will power it on. Don't ask me why, but it didn't work previously. Power button, PS button, R button. Come on, turn on. Okay, now it's working. Safe mode. Okay, important now is we have to rebuild the database. This will pretty much reset your icon layout. So if you had like your settings application on the 5th page and your minis on the 1st page, it will basically randomly shuffle it, which is a bit annoying, but you have to do this to get the UNO bubble to run what you want. After the database rebuilding, the UNO bubble will check if the file is legit inside of the AND folder, so the UNO folder, but it will run the content from the folder without the AND. So it will run our signed VHBL.ISO technically. As you can see, well, the icons now are still the same because they were the same before. But if I now run UNO, it should run the VHBL instead of UNO, simply because it now will load the data from the non-AND folder, but will check if the file is legit from the yes AND folder, if that makes any sense. As you can see, I can now run filer via UNO. As you can see, it's UNO running the VHBL PSP game. The trick is, inside of the PSPemulator there's a structure, and it kind of uses AND symbols to, well, for comments it will send to the PSPemulator, and inside of this AND folder we can see the UNO game, the 30 MB legit UNO game, and inside of this new folder we created is our signed ISO of the VHBL. This is pretty much a trick. You sign a game, or you sign an ISO file which has to use the base of a game which we used, which is UNO. Then you rename this folder, create the same folder without the additional sign, drop the signed file in, rebuild database, and so on. I hope it was easier to follow this long tutorial than the previous short one. I know this video is very long, so I know it's tired to view a long video, but it's also tired to make a long video. I hope you had success with this method, and if you're in 330 or 335, don't worry, we won't forget you. We will release something soon. Don't ask when, but we will release something, and as long as you stay on 335, you will be able to use the bubbles. If you update, you will not be able to use the bubbles, because an update will very likely fix this, because Sony doesn't want you to have free games. So yeah, have fun with your new UNO, VHBL, whatever bubble. As always, thanks for watching.